Yeah, my name is Chad C. I'm a web developer. I've been doing this for roughly 27 years. Not quite at the start of the internet, but pretty close. And for the past 12 years, I've been doing that, running C Interactive to provide white label website development for agencies, almost exclusively around WordPress. And if I'm not writing code, you can find me writing music. My educational background is actually in music. Um, when I was in school, there was no um, development courses for online. The internet was just getting started. Everything that I learned in terms of development came from actually books, reading on the train to music school. Um, I think the two of those things are an odd match sometimes when you think about it. But for me, they kind of go hand in hand. I've always been interested in technology, um, no matter what venue it's in, development or music. Um, and that's just where my interest lies. And I'm a firm believer in if you pursue the things that you're interested in, that's that's where success will come for you. I went to Berkeley College of Music in Boston. No, I started out at a local college here, Austin P State University, as a music performance major, and then I quickly discovered that um, performance really isn't in my personality. I'm not a type A um, person, although I can be if I need to. Um, and really, my interest lied in music technology and engineering and production in MIDI, which is the language that um, keyboards and synthesizers use to talk to each other and to computers to make music. And that's really where my passion and interest was, just in addition to being a music lover and a musician. Um, and so the college just was a performance based curriculum at that time where I was at. So went into change major to mass communications to photography, just in an effort to get a degree, but had an opportunity um, to apply to Berkeley, got in, and me and my wife packed up and traveled 2,000 miles and um, found a little place outside of Boston where we could afford to live as newlyweds, and rode the train in every day to Berkeley. And it was a wonderful experience. And my first gig out of school was actually producing one of the first um, internet news broadcasts, which was, I don't know if anybody remembers, was Real Audio. I don't know if anybody remembers those plugins that we had to deal with um, way back then, but produced a 5 minute um, technology news broadcast every day for a print publication that was trying to get into new media, and loved the technology side of that, and the rest is history. I think that's a huge um, question to dig into, but I think at the 10,000 foot view, is that it really boils down to WordPress wins because of just its low total cost of ownership. And there's a lot that goes into that equation. The fact that it's free, it's easy to use on the business user side, it's versatile, it's extensible, there's tons of customization options. Um, and it can go as deep as you want on the development side. You know, if you're a developer just starting out, you know, you can add plugins and themes that get you 90% of the way there sometimes, or you can develop everything from scratch. It's just a wonderful ecosystem to develop in. It's SEO friendly out of the box. And because of its open source nature, which used to be kind of this red flag for everybody in the business community when we would talk about choices of content management systems, I think we've gotten over that hump now. But uh, due to the nature of that, there's this wonderful and huge community of support and developers that are out there that um, just provide this wealth of information to help you tackle whatever you might be looking to do with WordPress. I know when I started digging into it about 12 years ago, and looking at other alternatives, it just became kind of a no-brainer over time, especially on the back end when it comes time to deliver a product to a customer. There are so many ways and so many tools that you can add to make it so easy for them, for a business user, non-technical user, to log in and just manage content without getting bogged down in the weeds of you need to go here, flip this switch, um, or any of those kind of technical details that you've got to write a script for that they've got to turn around and follow. It's the WordPress team has done a really good job of streamlining that back end. And I think that comes from its roots really of being a blogging platform. That's how it started. Uh, and of course, today it's grown into be a complete content management solution for just about anything that you can imagine. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is this process of a headless WordPress, and we've had this for a few years with the introduction of what they call the REST API in WordPress, and what it enables developers to do is to use WordPress uh, purely as a content management system on the back end, but on the front end provide you the flexibility to not necessarily use the WordPress front end, but maybe use a different front end that might be more suitable and more specific to a certain project or certain task. Um, or even not even a front end. You could think of examples like a mobile application that you already have developed, and suddenly you have a need for a business user to add content to that mobile app. You can hook WordPress up to your app, use the WordPress admin backend to manage all of that content. You know, you could take it to a digital display system and manage the content for all of your displays. Really, anywhere that you need a tool to manage content, um, we're beginning to see that we're beginning to see WordPress being used to go beyond what we typically think that it can do, which is manage and deliver a website. Now people are beginning to leverage really its core strength in content management and push that data out to wherever it's needed. Another thing that comes to mind are is visual editing, and there have been a handful of solutions like add-on solutions in the past that have done a pretty good job of giving a business user a tool on the back end to visually place objects and elements and copy and actually see what it's going to look like in real time on the front end. Um, the core WordPress team a few years ago had begun to tackle that native in WordPress without having to use a third-party tool. And while it hasn't quite caught up to those tools yet, it's definitely a high priority for the core WordPress development team. And every update that they roll out pretty much guarantees an enhancement to that editor. So that's got a lot of traction behind it. I think the third thing is probably is the buzzword of the day, and that's AI. Um, on the development side, we're already seeing that seeing AI tools being used to become a proxy for um, uh, finding solutions or getting guidance through sites like Stack Exchange or GitHub or CodePen. Your normal process would be if you're hitting a brick wall and you're a developer and you can't find a solution or you're hitting an error, you reach out to a community. AI provides a different solution for that by aggregating all of that information into a system where you can query and pop back those results. The challenge is that those results are not always 100% accurate, but they're getting better every day. Um, Also, taking your code and refactoring it, which means you've written a whole bunch of code in different times and different places, put it in the AI engine and saying, hey, kind of rework it, give it back to me, streamline it, make it more efficient. And we're seeing a lot of traction there. There's still no AI integration within the WordPress core itself, but that's probably coming within the next couple of years. But we are beginning to see plugins that already use AI for like automation and search engine optimization. Yeah, we were having a conversation about this a few days ago, and I think what's going to happen, because there's a lot of angst around it, right? Hey, we need this 6-month pause right now to figure out how we approach AI, and not just let this run wild. Um, I think it's going to be like anything else. It's going to be a tool. You use the analogy of the music industry. We went through this with MIDI, with sampling, with virtual instruments. Oh, these things are going to replace A, B, or C. And you're right, to a certain extent, they do. But at the end of the day, when it all kind of settles down, it really just becomes another tool in the toolbox. And I think what we're going to see is really another industry or job opportunity, um, that comes up for AI management for prompt development. You know, you have a business user that will go to this person and say, "Hey, here's my objective. Here's what I want. Help me get it out of this system." Um, so I think there's a new industry that's going to pop up out of it. Yeah, so I think experience is the differentiator. You know, when you look out at the marketplace, and we've all seen these ads for tools where anyone can build a website or build a website in 30 minutes, drag and drop, and that's all absolutely true. There are tools out there that can do that. You can certainly use them. But it's kind of the same as marketing a paintbrush, I think, and saying anyone can paint. That's true too. Anyone can put paint on a canvas. Whether that's becomes a good painting or not is probably up for debate. But the one thing that is true is that it will get better with experience. And you know, if you look at what development is and what it entails, it's, you know, building a website to it's a big puzzle, and there every piece of the puzzle is its own little problem to solve. Um, and within each of those puzzle pieces, and then there's those problems, there's at least a handful of ways to tackle each of those things. And the only way that you learn the best solution for those problems is through trial and error. It's through experience. You know, as a front end developer, you know, you have to be proficient in a handful, well, I'll say 5 different programming languages at least. Um, and within those languages, there's always a handful of ways to tackle each scenario. But I think the challenge is, as a developer, you can't just sit and write code. You need experience and visibility into the entire website creation process, and it's a fantastic and interesting process. Um, but that visibility and that experience to the whole thing from the beginning to the end, um, that's how you gain knowledge to be able to make better decisions from a development perspective. And you can also begin, as you grow and absorb that knowledge, you become more of a team player and more valuable to the team as a whole. And you know, you can make guidance on things like usability and security, or even design. You know, we're all kind of experts in our little track, um, but the whole process takes a team. And sometimes, you know, for example, a developer or a designer could reach out to you and say, "Hey, I've got this idea for navigation, for a navigation bar. I think it would be cool if it did this or did that. Um, what do you think about that?" And you got to look at it not from just the point of how can I make it work, how can I develop it, but it's on everybody's shoulders to say, is that the best decision? Is it usable? Is it the best decision for the end user and what the business user's goals are? And that has to be kind of the litmus test uh, in every step of the process, from planning, design, testing, development. You have to be a part of that. You have to be engaged in that. And the only way that you know what those right answers are is through experience. And the one thing in this industry that you can't stop doing is learning. This industry just changes so fast and so much. Wow. Probably the biggest thing that people don't know is that nothing is hidden for front end development. Nothing is really proprietary. That's not true. Nothing is inaccessible. You can, if you visit a website or you see something that's very interesting and engaging, there's almost no barrier to finding out how it's been created. And that's how a lot of times we as front end developers learn how to do stuff. You see something new and cool and you go dig into it. Um, and in conjunction with that, something that people probably don't know is that built into every browser is a set of development tools that allows you to bring up a console that will show you all the code, um, how it's interacting, all the bits and pieces, how all the parts go together. You can do things like debug. You can change code on the fly and see what the impact of that is. You can simulate that code on a mobile device. It's very useful in sometimes dealing with a client to bring those tools up, like on a screen share, when they're trying to, or with a designer when they're trying to convey, a design change that they want to make. You can bring up those developer tools and you can start making those tweaks in real time in a way that they can see and go, oh yeah, no, I think I want it 15 pixels to the left. You move it 15 pixels to the left. Oh, you know what? That's not even close to what I thought it was going to look like. So let's change it this way or that way. Um, Another thing would be a good part of the work is repetitive. Um, while we're writing code all the time, a lot of it is the same syntax or literally the same words over and over and over again. So developers get really good at using keyboard shortcuts or finding ways around um, not having to deal with that monotony. There are code editors or IDEs out there that are streamlined and customized just to take that load off of you. You can go even as far as getting a hardware device. I've got what's called a Steam Deck or Stream Deck, and it's primarily used for podcasters, for video casters, to push a button and bring in a video element or change to a different camera or just perform an action. I've got mine set up to basically write pieces of code that you find yourself writing 100 times a day. You just push the button and it's generated. Um, Probably the last thing is that for a regular internet user, or we use this a lot. It comes up a lot with clients. Um, Shift reload is your best friend. And what that is everybody's got on their browser the little, almost looks like a recycling icon, the reload icon. And what that does is when you hit it just normally, it reloads the page, but it uses the cached content that it already had previously. So all of the HTML and the CSS and JavaScript and images that go into making that page, it just kind of does a refresh with the stuff that it got before from the server. What Shift Reload does, holding the Shift key down and hitting that reload button, is that it goes out and gets new copies of all of that content. And that becomes really important at the end of the development cycle when we're doing testing or previewing with a client. Uh, Sometimes when they go and look at something that they've already seen before, they don't see the change that you've made or has been requested. So uh, you're always instructing them to, hey, hit shift reload to see that the latest and greatest version of what you're looking at. Wow. Um, that's a great question that I'm not sure I have a great answer for, but I could think of a bunch of cool things to say about, what a future site might look like. Immersive 3D, VR, augmented reality, um, things that I think probably will be on the sites of the future. But I think in reality, a lot of those things have a very short shelf life unless you can find a way to make them particularly useful and unobtrusive to the end user. The goal is always to not ask too much of the end user. So I think it really depends on what methods and devices end users are going to be engaged and interacting on the web in the future. When I think of other industries like television, for example, 3D TV came and went a decade ago, and while it was interesting and cool, it just, in my opinion, it simply just asked too much from the viewer. So I think we have that same challenge online. You just can't ask the user to do too much. So I think whatever the future of the web looks like, it's probably really less about bells and whistles and more about usability. Now, I think one way we could get there is by leveraging AI to help us produce websites that can predict user behavior, um, to modify design or content on the fly. I can think of, maybe e-commerce sites that present images of products that are already in your home visually, by example, or copy that adjusts itself on the fly for regionality, or more intelligent chat bots, or on the development side, automated things like system setups, like WordPress setups, um, maybe based on a conversation instead of flipping switches or settings. Um, I also think that, as we're seeing it now, as bandwidth and connectivity becomes less and less of an issue, it's going to allow us to create richer user experiences by delivering heavy content like video on the fly in a way that it hasn't been possible in the past. So, I really think the bottom line is that websites are going to be faster, they're going to be smarter, by anticipating what the user's needs are in a way that is more proactive, and does not ask them to engage as much.